He walked into the office holding a Santa hat, but there was nothing magical or cheerful about his presence. The white beard and red clothes didn't hide the weight he carried. When he finally spoke, it wasn't about presents or smiling children. It was about secrets, guilt, and a life he'd left behind. And in that moment, I knew this wouldn't be an ordinary session. I had just left a session with a patient who'd been crying for 40 minutes when he walked in. Natural white beard, red pants, but the top was just a wrinkled flannel shirt, like he'd taken off the uniform halfway. He held the hat in his hand, crushing the pom-pom between his fingers. He didn't smile. Most people smile when they come in here, even those who are shattered inside. He didn't. He sat down slowly, like someone testing if the chair would hold. The air conditioner hummed low, but I could hear his breathing, heavy. I waited. I always wait. He looked at the floor, at the bookshelf, at the window, everything but me. When he finally spoke, his voice came out hoarse. He said he worked as a mall Santa on the other side of town. 6 hours a day, 5 days a week. Kid on lap photo, next. Kid on lap photo, next. He talked about it like someone describing an assembly line. Mechanical, without warmth. I asked how he felt doing it. He shrugged, said it paid the bills. But there was something about the way he held that hat. His fingers wouldn't stop. Rolling it, unrolling it. An anxiety that didn't fit in his body. I let the silence grow. Sometimes silence brings more than any question. He mentioned that the kids called him the real Santa because of the beard. He laughed, short, dry, no humor. Said some mothers asked him to scold their children. Play the full part. It's a good old man who sees everything. Who knows if you've been naughty or nice? If he hated that part, he stopped talking. Looked at his own hands. I asked if he had children. The question came out naturally. Part of the conversation. He stayed still too long. Then said no. Not anymore. He didn't explode, didn't deflect. Just left it hanging there. 2 words that weighed like stone. Not anymore. I noted it mentally. Didn't write anything. Sometimes writing scares people. Interrupts. I let his phrase breathe. He continued talking about the mall. The lights, the fake cinnamon smell, the Christmas music on loop. As if he wanted to fill the office with details so he would have to explain that not anymore. But I had heard it, and he knew. The session ended without major revelations. He scheduled for the next week, left through the same door, with the same crumpled hat in his hand. I stared at the empty chair for a while. There was something there, something I couldn't name yet. A sadness that didn't match the red clothes. A weight that the white beard didn't hide. I started thinking about him between sessions. It's not uncommon. Some patients stay. Take up space in your head even when they're not in the office. But with him, it was different. It wasn't clinical concern. It was curiosity. A sense that there were layers I hadn't seen yet. In the following sessions, he always arrived at the same time, punctual as a clock. Sat in the same place, started talking about work, small stories. The child who asked for a dragon as a gift. The boy who was afraid to sit on his lap. The mother who cried taking the photo because her son had leukemia, and this would be their last Christmas together. He told these stories with distance. Like they were scenes from a movie he watched, not lived. But sometimes in the middle of a mundane story, he'd drop something, a phrase, a detail that didn't make sense in context. Like when he mentioned he knew what it was like to be afraid of police, or when he said he understood children who lied to their parents, or when he commented that malls were good places to disappear because nobody really looks at anyone. I wrote down those phrases, mentally first. Then on paper, after he left, I was starting to assemble a map. Loose pieces that didn't yet form a picture. In the 4th or 5th session, he brought coffee. Put one on the small table next to my chair. Said he'd bought 2 by mistake. He hadn't bought 2 by mistake. You know when someone lies about small things? I accepted, drank. It was lukewarm, kind of bitter, but I drank it. He didn't touch his. It sat there cooling until the end of the session. That day, he talked more. About how he'd gotten here. Said he sought therapy because one of the mall employees had suggested it. She'd noticed that he spent too much time alone on breaks, that he didn't talk to anyone, that he seemed sad even when he smiled for the children. She'd given him a card. My card. He'd kept it for weeks before calling. I asked what made him finally call. He said he'd had a dream. A dream where he was dressed as Santa but couldn't take off the outfit. The beard had stuck to his face. The boots wouldn't come off. And he needed to run from something, but he couldn't run in that whole costume. He woke up sweating, realized he was sleeping in his work clothes, had forgotten to take them off when he got home. That's when he decided to call. I asked what he was running from in the dream. He went quiet, took a sip of the cold coffee, made a face, said he didn't know. He was lying again, but this time it was a bigger lie, a lie that covered something that hurt. I let it pass. It wasn't time to press yet. The sessions became routine. He talked about the mall. I listened. He brought coffee. I drank. He avoided certain subjects. I didn't force. It was a dance. Careful, slow. Waiting for the right moment. Till one afternoon, he arrived different. Didn't bring coffee. Didn't sit in his usual spot. Stayed near the door. Like he needed to know the exit was there. Within reach, he said he needed to tell me something. He was afraid. Not of me, of putting it into words. 'Cause, as long as it stayed just in his head, it was one thing. But, spoken, said out loud, it would become another. Would become real in a way he didn't know if he could bear. I said we could go slowly, that he could stop at any time, that this space was safe. He laughed. A bitter laugh, said nowhere was safe. Not for him. Not really, but he sat down. Not in his usual place. It's closer to the window, where he could see the street. He started talking about what he did before. Before Santa. Before the mall. Before everything became what it was now. Said he worked with numbers. Financial consulting. He said it with invisible quotation marks. The kind of quotation marks you put when the official word hides the truth. He helped companies, people, move money from one place to another, transform paper into other paper, make questions not be asked. He was good at it, very good. He made more in a month than most people make in a year. He had an apartment overlooking the river, a car that cost more than a house, Swiss watch, custom-tailored clothes. Ate at restaurants where there were no prices on the menu. Traveled to places where the dollar was worth less and his money was worth everything. He talked about it without nostalgia, without pride, like someone describing another person's life, because it was. It was the life of a man who didn't exist anymore, a man he'd killed when everything fell apart. I asked what had happened. He looked out the window, a bus passed, then another. He waited for both to pass before answering. He said he'd gotten involved with the wrong people. Not that the people he worked with before were right, but these were wrong in a different way. Dangerous, he knew, but the money was too good. And he had a weakness. Always thought he was smarter than others, that he could control the situation, that he knew when to stop. He didn't. The operation was big, millions passing through accounts that looked clean but weren't. He was in the middle, not at the top, but high enough to know too much. It's high enough to be a problem if something went wrong. And it did. Of course it did. Someone talked. Someone always talks. Could be fear, could be money, could just be exhaustion. But someone opens their mouth and everything collapses. That's what happened. A federal operation, big headlines in the papers, arrests live on television. He was out of the country when it happened. Luck, or maybe instinct. He'd felt something strange in the weeks before. Canceled meetings, unreturned calls, people avoiding eye contact. He invented a trip. International conference, any excuse. When he saw the news, he knew he couldn't return. Not as he was. Not with that name, that face, that life. He stayed hidden. Months. Changing locations. Sleeping little. Eating less. Shaving every day because he thought someone might recognize him. Until one day he stopped shaving. Got tired. Let it grow. White. Completely white. He looked in the mirror and didn't recognize himself. That was good. That's what he needed. not recognizing himself. That's when someone commented that he looked like Santa Claus. It was December. It was at a cafe. The waitress said it, joking. Smiling, he didn't smile back, but he kept thinking, Santa Claus, the most obvious person, most visible. Nobody looks for someone who's in plain sight. Nobody imagines someone would hide by becoming the most conspicuous thing possible. He got documents. It wasn't hard. When you have hidden money and know the right people, nothing is hard. New name, new story, new invented past, birth certificate, work card, all fake, but all perfect. He applied for the Santa job, medium-sized city mall. Far from where he'd lived before, far from where anyone could recognize him, was hired on the spot, natural beard, experience with the public, immediate availability. It was perfect for them, and for him, it was the perfect hiding place. He stopped talking, looked at me, waiting, judgment, maybe, or shock, or fear. But I didn't say anything, just nodded for him to continue. There was more. I felt there was more. He took a deep breath, said it worked. For years, it worked. He was Santa Claus, arrived at the mall, put on the outfit, sat in the decorated chair. Children came. Wishes were made. Photos were taken. He smiled. They smiled. At the end of the day, he took off the outfit, went back to the small apartment. Frozen food, television, sleep, start over. He had no friends, no family, nobody. It was intentional. People ask questions. People remember. People connect dots. Better to have nobody, but loneliness hurts. Hurts in a way that corrodes, little by little, like rust. He started to feel it, especially after sessions when the children left. When the mall closed, when he was alone in the dressing room taking off the red outfit, he began to realize he wasn't just hiding from the police. He was hiding from himself, from what he'd done, from what he'd been, from the choices he'd made. And the white beard, the red outfit, the fake smile didn't hide that. No matter how much he tried, that's when he started thinking about seeking help. But he was afraid. Therapists ask questions. Want to know about the past? Want to understand? And he couldn't tell, couldn't risk it, till one of the mall employees suggested it. Casually, without pressure. She'd noticed. People always notice more than we think. She gave him the card. My card. Said I was good. That, I didn't judge. That, I listened. He kept the card for weeks. Looked at it, put it away again, picked up the phone, changed his mind. Until he finally called. Almost hung up when I answered, but didn't hang up. Made an appointment, came, and here he was. Telling all this, putting it into words, making it real. I asked how he felt now. Having talked, he thought, said scared, relieved, confused, all at once. Like Shady opened a door that had been locked too long and now did you know what to do with what was inside. I said he didn't have to do anything yet, that we could figure it out together, that I wasn't there to judge him, that I was there to listen, to help him understand himself. He nodded, but didn't look convinced. There was doubt in his eyes. Like he expected me to explode, or call the police, or send him away. I did none of those things, just scheduled the next session. He left slowly, looking back once before closing the door. I was alone in the office. His coffee was still on the small table, cold, untouched. I threw it away, washed the cup, sat down again, processed a man seeking redemption, dressed as Santa Claus, or not redemption, survival. Hiding. It was all so strange it seemed like fiction. But it wasn't. I had looked in his eyes, had seen that was real. And now I knew, carried that secret with me, had responsibility, professional, ethical, legal, but above all, human. A man had trusted me, had opened up in a way he probably hadn't in years. I couldn't betray that, even if I wanted to, even if I should. I spent the night thinking about what's right, what's legal, what's ethical, about the guidelines, the code of conduct, the boundaries between helping and being an accomplice. I didn't sleep well, dreamed about white beards and red outfits and men running from something I couldn't see. In the next session, he didn't mention what he'd told me. Went back to talking about work, about the children, as if that confession hadn't happened. I let it be. Sometimes we need to pull back after advancing too far. Need to breathe, recover. But something had changed. The way he looked at me. Less guarded, more present. Like he'd removed a layer, and underneath were more layers, but at least one had come off. He started bringing coffee again, and began bringing other things, small things. A bookmark he'd found at a bookstore and thought I'd like. A box of tea left over from a mall gift. A keychain shaped like a book. I accepted them, kept them. Didn't quite know what to do with it. Patients sometimes bring gifts. It's normal. But with him, it felt different. Each thing had weight, like they were pieces of a puzzle he was assembling, or clues, traces of who he was before being Santa. The sessions grew deeper. He started talking about family, about the wife he had. The daughter. Small, 5 years old when everything fell apart. Brown eyes, curly hair, laughed at everything. The kind of child who turned any place into an amusement park. He talked about her with a pain that didn't fit in words. Said she didn't understand when her mother packed the bags and left. Asked about her father. Okay? The mother made something up. Work. Long trip. Anything to avoid explaining that the father was a criminal, that he was running, that he might never come back. He never saw his daughter again. It was safer that way. For her, for the mother, for everyone. But it hurt. Hurt in a way no time healed, because it wasn't just longing. It was guilt. Guilt for making choices that ended with him losing what he loved most. I asked if he'd tried any kind of contact. He shook his head, said it would be selfish, that the girl was better off without him, that she had a new life. New father, probably. School, friends, future. He was the past. A past better forgotten. But he couldn't forget. Saw his daughter in every child who sat on his lap. Every girl with curly hair, every laugh. Which was torture. But it was also the only way he had to be close to her. Even if it wasn't her. Even if it was illusion. He cried in that session. It was the first time. Not that dramatic crying. It was silent. Tears streaming, shoulders shaking. Hands covering his face. I let him, offered tissue. Waited. There was nothing to say. No comfort that made sense. When he stopped, he apologized. I said he didn't need to. Crying wasn't weakness. It was human. He gave a sad smile. Said he hadn't felt very human in a long time. Felt more like a ghost. Wandering, pretending, hidden inside an outfit that wasn't his. The following sessions were intense. He started talking more about his involvement with crime. The details he'd avoided before. No names. But situations, choices, moments where he could have said no and didn't, where he could have left and stayed, where he chose money over ethics, power over conscience, ego over safety. He didn't try to justify himself, didn't blame others, took responsibility, said he knew what he was doing, that he wasn't a victim, that he'd made conscious choices, and that now he paid for them, every day, every child on his lap, every night alone. Every time he saw his own reflection and didn't recognize who looked back, I listened, always listened. But inside, something was changing in me too. I started thinking about my own choices, about things I did and didn't do, about moments where I chose the easy path, where I lied, even small lies, where I was cowardly, where I was selfish. Not in the same way as him, not on the same scale, but still. Choices that leave marks that we carry that way. I realized he was teaching me something about humanity, about how nobody is just one thing. There's no pure villain or pure hero. There are people, complicated, contradictory, capable of kindness and cruelty, sometimes on the same day, sometimes in the same act, and that scared and fascinated me at the same time. One day he arrived early. Knocked on the door while I was still organizing notes from the previous session. Came in without waiting for an answer. Sat down. Looked agitated, eyes wide, hands trembling more than usual. He said he'd seen someone at the mall, familiar face, from before, from when he had another life, didn't get close, stayed far. But he was sure it was someone from that time, someone who knew his face, his real name, the whole story. I asked if the person had seen him. He said he didn't know. Maybe not. The beard helped. The outfit helped. But the fear didn't help. The fear made it obvious, made him sweat, tremble, avoid looking. And that drew attention. He'd left the mall early, pretended to be sick, went home, locked the door, closed the curtains. Sat in the dark thinking if he should run again, start all over. Another place, another name, another beard. But he was tired of running, tired of hiding, tired of pretending. Didn't know if he had the strength to start over. Didn't know if it was worth it. Didn't know anything anymore. I asked what he wanted to do. He looked at me, direct, without the mask he usually wore, without the sad smile, without the controlled posture. Just a tired man. Old before his time, broken in ways no mending could fix. He said he wanted to stop running, stop hiding, stop pretending, just wanted to stop. But he didn't know how, because stopping meant facing, and facing meant consequences. Prison, trial, everything he'd avoided for years. Everything fear wouldn't let him accept. Spry didn't say he should turn himself in. It wasn't my role, wasn't my decision. Spry asked how he thought it would be to live without fear, without having to look over his shoulder, without having to pretend, even if it came with a price, he thought. Said he didn't know. Didn't remember what it was like to live without fear. It had been so long that fear was part of him, like an organ, like blood. Removing fear would be like removing a piece of himself. He didn't know who he'd be without it. The session ended without resolution. He left more confused than when he came in. I was worried, not just professionally, humanly. Was afraid of what he might do, run again, hurt himself. Worse, I spent the whole week thinking. Checked my phone more often than usual, waiting for a message, cancellation, something. Nothing came. On the day of the next session, he didn't show up. I waited 15 minutes. Half an hour? An hour? Nothing. Called voicemail. Sent a message. Unread, felt something tighten in my chest. That feeling that something was wrong. Very wrong. I spent the rest of the day trying not to panic. Told myself he could have simply forgotten, or decided not to come. Or 1,000 other reasons that didn't involve tragedy. But I didn't believe any of them. The next day, he appeared, without warning, without an appointment. Knocked on the door between sessions. Opened it. Kay was different, lighter. I can't explain, but something had changed. In his eyes, in his posture, in the way he breathed. He came in, sat down, said he'd decided. That he was going to do something he should have done a long time ago. That he didn't know if it was right. But he knew it was necessary for him to be able to live without being a ghost. He took an envelope from his pocket, old paper, kind of yellowed. The edges worn from being folded and unfolded so many times, hands trembling holding it, eyes fixed on it like the envelope was a bomb about to explode. He said he'd written a letter years ago, right after everything fell apart. When he was still close enough to the events to remember details, when the guilt was fresh, when it still hurt the way physical pain hurts, before learning to live with it, before becoming numb. The letter was for a family. The family of someone he'd hurt. Not directly, not intentionally. But as a consequence of his choices, his actions, his selfishness. He didn't explain details, didn't say names, didn't tell the whole story, but he said enough for me to understand. There was a victim. There was guilt. There was something irreparable he'd caused and carried like a stone tied around his neck ever since, the letter explained. Asked for forgiveness. Didn't expect to be forgiven. Just wanted them to know. To understand that he remembered. That he carried it. That he hadn't forgotten even though he'd disappeared. But he'd never sent it. Because sending meant being traced, found, arrested. So he kept it in his pocket. In a drawer. changed its location but never threw it away. Read it sometimes, when the guilt pressed too hard, when he needed to remember why he was doing all this, why he deserved to live hidden, why he didn't deserve peace. He held out the envelope to me, hands trembling so much he almost dropped it. Said he wanted me to decide whether he should send it or not, whether it was right or wrong, whether it would help or make things worse. Said he trusted me, that I would know what to do, that he couldn't decide alone, that he needed someone to take this from him, even if it was cowardly, even if it was wrong to transfer that responsibility. I looked at the envelope, at his hands, at his face, tired, old, broken. I saw a man who'd spent years punishing himself, hiding himself, denying himself any kind of peace or relief. A man who'd turned his own life into a prison, and now was asking me to decide if he deserved a chance at freedom, or if he deserved to stay imprisoned. It wasn't a decision I could make. It wasn't my role. It wasn't ethical. It wasn't professional. It wasn't safe. For him, for me, for anyone. But I looked in his eyes and I saw it wasn't about the decision. It was about sharing the weight. He'd carried it alone too long, was asking for help, the only way he could. Offering responsibility, offering choice. Because he no longer trusted his own ability to choose, right? I took a deep breath, said I couldn't decide for him, that this was his choice, but that I could help him think, weigh, understand what each option meant, and then he would decide, with support, but it would still be his decision. He shook his head, insisted, said he'd already tried to decide, years trying. Couldn't, because any choice seemed wrong. Sending was selfish. Not sending was cowardly. He was stuck in this middle ground. Paralysis. That was killing him slowly. We sat in silence, long, heavy. Me looking at him looking at the envelope, the air conditioner humming, car noise on the street, normal life happening outside while inside that office time seemed to have stopped. Then I did something I shouldn't. I took the envelope, not because I thought it was right, not because I knew what to do, but because he needed it. Because holding it alone was destroying him. And sometimes breaking a small rule prevents a bigger break. I said I would think, that I needed time, that I wasn't promising anything, but that I'd hold it for now. Take the weight from him temporarily. Give him space to breathe. Think. Exist without that envelope burning in his pocket. He nodded, got up, left without saying anything more. Without thanking, without looking back. Like he was afraid I'd change my mind and give the envelope back before he got out the door. I was alone with the envelope, heavy, heavier than paper should be. I didn't open it, not then. Put it in the drawer, locked, as if locking could lessen the weight. It didn't. That night I didn't sleep. Lay there looking at the ceiling, thinking about what was right, what was ethical, what I should do, about all the principles I'd learned, all the guidelines, all the training, everything saying I'd done wrong, that I'd crossed a line, that I'd put myself in a dangerous position. But also thinking about the broken man who left my office lighter than he'd been in weeks, about the relief in his eyes, about how his shoulders had relaxed when I took the envelope. Like for the first time in years, he could breathe completely. And I thought about the family I didn't know, didn't even know if they still existed. If they were still waiting for answers, if they still cared, or if they'd moved on, made peace, found a way to live with unanswered questions. Sending the letter could reopen wounds, bring pain back, destroy peace that had been built with difficulty. Or it could bring closure, answers, relief from finally knowing. Not sending kept the secret, kept him safe, kept everything as it was, but also kept him trapped in guilt, in fear, in the impossibility of moving forward. There was no right answer. Any choice had a price. Any decision hurt someone. It was just a matter of choosing who and why. And if I could live with the consequences, morning came. I hadn't slept, but I had clarity. Small, fragile, but I had it. I opened the drawer, took the envelope. Opened it slowly, hands trembling a little. I couldn't decide without knowing, couldn't carry weight without understanding what weighed. I read the letter, all of it, every word, every sentence. Every request for forgiveness that didn't expect to be accepted. Every explanation that didn't justify. Every expression of pain that didn't heal but existed. Real, human. And I understood, finally understood what he carried. Why it weighed so much. Why he couldn't let it go. Why he'd turned his own life into penance. The letter talked about an accident. Not an ordinary car accident. It's an accident that happened while he was fleeing. From an operation gone wrong, from a chase, from a choice between stopping and being caught or continuing and risking. He chose to continue, and a child paid the price. A child who was crossing the street, holding hands with her mother. Coming back from somewhere, happy, alive, until he passed. No time to brake, no time to swerve. No time to do anything but feel the impact. Hear the scream. See in the rearview mirror the scene that would never leave his head. He didn't stop, kept going, because stopping meant prison. And prison in that moment seemed worse than death, seemed worse than anything. So he chose his freedom over her life. His future over her existence. The child died. He read it in the newspapers. Days later, from another state, with another name. Safe, free, alive. While she was dead because of him, because of his choice, because of his selfishness. And since then, he carried it. Every day, every night, every child who sat on his lap. Every laugh, every wish for a gift. Everything was a reminder, everything was punishment. Everything was an impossible attempt to pay a debt that had no payment. The letter explained this. To the family, said names, dates, details, everything he remembered, everything he'd never forget. Asked for forgiveness, didn't expect to receive it, just wanted them to know. That the accident hadn't been just an accident. That someone was responsible. That someone remembered. That someone was paying, in a different way. But paying. I finished reading, put the letter back in the envelope, carefully, like it was fragile. It was not the paper, but what it represented. Confession, guilt, humanity, all together. Heavy, I decided. It wasn't a quick decision. It wasn't an easy decision, but it was a decision. I would send it anonymously, without identification, without a trace. The family would have answers. He would have the possibility of relief. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't just. But it was something better than nothing. Better than continuing as it was. In the next session, he asked, before even sitting down, as soon as he came in, anxious eyes, trembling hands, needing to know. I told him that I would send it, that I'd keep him anonymous, that the family would know but couldn't trace it, that it was a compromise, middle ground, not perfect, but possible. He didn't thank me, didn't smile, didn't look relieved, looked scared. Like now that the decision had been made, reality was becoming more real. More concrete, more frightening. He sat down, was quiet for a long time, then asked what I thought would happen. The family would search, if police would get involved, if he would finally pay. For real. Not with guilt, but with real consequences. I said I didn't know. There was no way to know. Maybe they wouldn't do anything. Maybe the letter would bring peace and they'd decide to let it go. Or maybe they'd search, investigate, find him. But that wasn't in his control. Not anymore. It was done. Decision made. Now it was wait, live, breathe, and see what came. He nodded. Said he was ready. He didn't look ready, but he said he was. That he had to be. That he couldn't keep living the way he was living. Hidden, trapped, dead inside. He'd rather risk it. Face it, even if it hurt. Even if it ended badly. At least it would be an ending, not eternal limbo. I sent the letter 3 days later from another city. Drove 2 hours, mailed it, came back. No return address, no identification, just the address that he'd memorized, carried for years. And the letter, telling the truth the family deserved to know. Then it was waiting. He kept coming to sessions, but he changed. Talked more about the present, not so much about the past. Made plans, small ones. Plant a garden, adopt a dog, take a class. Normal things. Things that people who aren't hiding do. Said he'd stopped looking over his shoulder all the time. That he still felt fear, but different fear. Not paralyzing fear. Fear that existed but didn't control, didn't dominate. Didn't prevent living. Weeks passed, nothing happened. No news. No response. No consequences. Life continued. Normal. Ordinary. He worked, came to sessions, existed without drama, without tragedy, without spectacular ending. Sometimes life is like that. Without clear resolution, without defined ending. Just continuation. One day after another, carrying, living, trying, failing, trying again, until he stopped coming. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't sudden. It was gradual. Sessions became more spaced out, bi-weekly, monthly. Then he called, said he thought he was ready to try alone. That therapy had helped. A lot. But that he needed to see if he could walk without support. For now. But that he knew where to find me if he needed. I said yes. That the door was always open. That he could come back whenever he wanted. Without judgment. Without questions. Just acceptance. He thanked me. This time he thanked me. Said I'd saved his life. Not literally, but in a way, yes. I'd given him space to be human again. To confess. To exist without a mask. Even if just for an hour a week. It had been enough. Had made a difference. He hung up. Didn't come back. I'd never heard from him again. Didn't look for him. Didn't try to find him. That was our agreement. Temporary help, safe space. And then move on, each in our own direction. Carrying what had to be carried. Letting go of what could be let go. I think about him sometimes. When I see Santa Claus, when Christmas comes. When I think about the masks we wear, about secrets we keep, about guilt we carry, and about how, sometimes, all we need is someone to share the weight for a while, to give us space to breathe, to remind us we're human, complicated, imperfect, but human. The hat he held in the first session was left behind. It's stored in a box. With other objects, bookmark, tea, keychain, memories of a man who passed through here, left a mark. Moved on. I look at these things from time to time. When the day has been difficult, when a patient tests me, when I question choices, and I remember that nobody is just one thing, that we all carry. That redemption isn't a single event. It's a process. Daily, difficult, imperfect. And that sometimes an anonymous letter sent from another city is the best we can do. It's not justice. It's not perfect. But it's human. It's an attempt. Something. And in the end, maybe that's what matters. Not being perfect. But trying. Failing. Trying again. Carrying each other when the weight gets too heavy. And then letting go. Moving on. Living. Because life continues. Always continues, with or without resolution. With or without answers, it just continues, and we go along with it. Trying to do better, trying to be better. Knowing we'll never be perfect, but trying anyway. Every day. New child, new patient, new story, new chance, new weight to hold, new relief to give, new humanity to witness. And we listen. Always listen, because that's what we do. It's who we are. It's why we're here. To hear, to hold, to release, to remember, and to help others do the same. One session at a time, one story at a time, one complicated human being at a time, and in the end, it's enough. It has to be. Because it's all we have. Stories like this remind us that nobody is just what they appear to be. We all carry our own guilt, secrets, and searches for redemption. And sometimes all we need is someone who will listen to us. If you've ever felt the weight of something you can't carry alone, know that asking for help isn't weakness, it's courage. Share this story with someone who needs to hear that today. Let's continue this conversation in the comments. What do you think it really means to redeem yourself?